All right. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate your interest in our journey, and we look forward to sharing that. Kate, would you start off with an introduction on your role and your time with the organization?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Brown. I've been on the board of Elevations for 6 years now, and I am in my third and final year of the board chair role. So I'm delighted that you're here to join us.
Very good. Thank you, Kate. I'm Michael Calcote. I'm Chief Financial Officer here at Elevations. Been here a dozen years at this point in time. Genevieve?
I'm Genevieve Cavallo, and I am our Vice President of Enterprise Transformation here at Elevations. I've been here about 10 years, and I oversee the areas of our project management office, our business process management, so your Category 6 folks, and our business intelligence team.
Very good. All right, so we'll provide an overview of how we approach strategic planning, and along with the inputs, talk about the foundational elements, and also how do we execute, right? This is an area that we feel like we've done pretty well over the years, both from putting the strategic plan together and then really executing well, although we don't always hit everything in the plan. We have had some questions that were provided in advance, a few of those. Thanks so much for providing those in advance. As we go through here, we'll attempt to address those. But to the extent that you have any follow-up or additional ones, we'll address them at the end of the session, okay? So from a overview of the strategic plan, this is just a high-level overview of, we put together a 5-year rolling plan. And so every year we take a fresh look at what have we learned since the prior year. Many of the strategic objectives that we're trying to execute on will need some refinement from one period to the next. And then some of them at a certain point of time will actually become operationalized, and we'll pull those out. But taking a fresh look at our strategic plan every year, make sure that we're really evolving it with the environment around us. Our goals at a high level, we first want to create just a high performance culture, right? A team that is both very, very engaged and that is capable of delivering just expert service to our members. That doing so will cultivate member loyalty, right? They will know that they are being served by people that are happy at what they're doing and that are actually expert at what they're doing and are focused on meeting their needs, again, with stellar service. And then as a byproduct, that really creates financial sustainability. They bring us more of their business and they tell their friends, right? And as a result, that provides great financial sustainability. Now, we have a balanced scorecard that really holds us accountable to make sure that we're delivering on these goals. So I show here the key performance guidelines for each of these segments. And we have parameters around what is successful execution versus what is not. So these are, again, fresh. We revisit them every year. Kate, we do this with the board on an annual basis and then do some pretty extensive conversations on, are these still the right ones? And are these the right levels that we're looking to achieve, right? Any perspective from your spot?
Yes, thank you. So the key performance guidelines are something that we do review, like Michael said, on an annual basis, but we also get an update on them monthly in our executive management report, which is very helpful for us. We can follow trends and look at, what are the pain points, what's going well on a monthly basis. So we're not playing catch up at the end of the year. It helps the board as it is our role to be strategic, it helps our board remain engaged with Jerry and his team during the year around these key performance guidelines.
And it's also a key part of your evaluation of the CEO, correct?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So we have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. So we have targets for these, and it's an integral part of our CEO assessment.
As a result, it's an integral part of my assessment on a regular basis too. So this does really help ensure that org-wide, we're all aligned and focused on what's creating value for our membership. And I should say that for those of you who don't know, we are a credit union and we are a cooperative. That means we are owned by our members. So that is really why they are at the center of how we approach strategic planning and making sure that we are focused on what's creating the most value for them. Now, this is an overview of our strategic planning cycle, and it's a little bit of an eye chart, partially because it looks like an eyeball in the middle. But really, the primary intent here is to note that we really view strategic planning as alive all throughout the course of the year. It's got activities in each of the quarters that helps ensure that we are continuing to look at the environment, adjust as necessary, and really focus on execution. From the one of the questions that was asked in advance, Kate, was just again the board engagement. A couple of key points that come into play here are upper right-hand corner, the spring board planning conference and fall board planning conference. Would you like to provide a little perspective?
Sure, that's a really important process for the board. In preparation, myself and our vice chair work closely with management in determining the agenda for the spring board planning session. We are working not only with Jerry's team, but we also work with external subject matter experts, and we do an analysis of the environment. It's the same kind of pestle analysis. I'll remind everybody, just to refresh your memory, that we review political, economic, technological, legal, and ethical forces. I think I covered all of them, just to get our take on what the organization is up against in this 5-year rolling planning cycle. So we do the pestle analysis with an outside consultant, and then we take the results of what the board has done and we look at them. We work independently, so we don't see the management's pestle analysis. And then, so, we have that independent piece, and then we compare, and then that kind of forms what we need to look at during the spring board planning.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, so a piece of this is also stress testing the objectives that we've got, and I'll give you a little bit more perspective on that shortly. And then really when we get to that fall board planning conference, what we're really looking to do is, hey, out of this 5-year plan, what are we really going to be focused on for the upcoming year? What are we going to bite off in the upcoming year? And we make sure that we are really coming up with what are very explicit success measures for the actions that we're going to take. That then, in the latter part of the year in November, we create, really make sure we're allocating the resources for execution and put together a business plan for submission to the board, again, with regards to the upcoming year. Now, the inputs for our spring strategic session, this has actually been called out as a strength in our feedback report for the systematic and integrated manner in which we really are gathering the right information to make us well informed as we prepare this plan. So Kate did a great overview of the pestle survey. This does go out to a cross section of the organization. The board, as Kate mentioned, and also leaders and selected individual contributors across the organization. This really helps provide us an environmental scan to make sure we're not really missing any blind spots as we consider how are we going to refine the strategic plan for the current cycle. We do bring in this also, it does include the SWOT analysis. We do bring in an expert to give us an environmental deep dive on what's going on in the industry overall and society overall, and what kind of changes do we need to be making. This expert actually does, as Kate mentioned, meet with the board ahead of the strategic plan to really perform this pestle analysis and look at the feedback and really help make sure that when we arrive for that board session, everyone is really well informed on what the issues are as we prepare the updated plan. One thing we've been doing over the last few years is really scenario analysis. And this comes into play with regards to, again, stress testing the objectives that we've got. So on the right-hand side, we've got 5 different objectives. And we, of course, understand that the world is going to be different tomorrow than it is today. The last couple of days have clearly accentuated that. And we need to be thinking about our strategic objectives and which of them are going to be resilient and ones that we'll want to allocate resources to regardless of the environment that we run into, right? And which of those are really more fragile than others, and that we will need to be adjusting our resource allocation and our approach over the cycle. So as an example, what we've got with diversity, equity, and inclusion and digital transformation, these are objectives that regardless of the environment that we go into, we will want to make sure that we are allocating resources and really pushing full ahead on those objectives. If I go to the other extreme and I think about market expansion, and in our world that can often mean opening up branches in new markets, which can take 2 or 3 years to break even, for example, then there are some environments where they are fragile and we will be backing off of that expansion, just as an example. Part of this process is we have on the lower left-hand side, I talk about quarterly signal monitoring of the environment by management teams. This has been a great opportunity for us to bring people from across the organization. We've got, Genevieve, probably 20 to 25 folks that are involved in that process. They're in different teams, so they're cross-functional. And what we ask them to do is really be looking at the signals that we're seeing in the marketplace and sharing thoughts on how do we need to adjust, if at all, our planning exercise, our execution. One of the primary benefits of this is really just developing across the organization some business acumen and really sharing perspectives from people with different backgrounds. And I think that's really helped broaden all of our perspectives in around the world around us.
Michael, can I jump in for a minute?
Please do.
This is a great slide for me to just insert the practice that the board does when we do the pestle analysis, and when we also look at our strategic objectives. There are things that the board needs further education on, and those really come out in the pestle analysis. And because we want to make efficient use of our time with management and not get into the weeds with management, and remain in our strategic role, we like to leverage outside consultants to come in and do educational work with us throughout the year. So for instance, we've had a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that's from an independent source. We learn more about digital transformation so we can perform our oversight function in a knowledgeable way. And we're up to speed on things as we go through those educational pieces.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, this is a part of that preparation for that board planning session. So a lot of what we get out of this pestle analysis of all these inputs is, Kate, really identifying what type of external market experts do we want to bring to the table, right, for that conversation. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Now, this is really an overview of our entire strategic plan. Really starts with the why. Why do we exist? What is our strategy? And really, how will we bring it to life? So putting it all together on one page is a great visual for really explaining to the organization all the different parts to it, and really what their place is in making sure that we're executing at the end of the day. We'll start off with a conversation on the why. Why do we exist? I just love this graphic. I'm gonna have to do it one more time. I don't love to say, okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I entertain very easily. But again, this is really the foundational element for the organization. And we start with the core values, which is critical to the culture that we are creating and enhancing on a regular basis. And I will tell you, we pay attention to this entire foundation every year, and we make sure that it resonates and that it is really evolving with the world around us. Now, many of these are are tried and true. There's been very little refinement to some of them, but I will tell you, we challenge them every year. The core values in particular, when I first came here, and I've been in banking my entire career, I was amazed at how much time we would spend in a room really looking at all those core values and looking at the underlying words behind them. We would spend hours really making sure that they resonated. Now, I got to admit, when I first came, it drove me crazy because I had never had that experience before. And what I've learned over time is really the power of words and the importance of making sure that they resonate across the entire organization. And when you do that, that really does help ensure that the entire organization is aligned and really holding each other accountable to living up to those core values. Okay. Now, a piece of this is we show here is the BHAG, and obviously the Baldrige has been a key piece of our approach to strategic planning to execution over the years. It has provided a great framework for making sure we are holding ourselves accountable to becoming more excellent each day. You show on the left-hand side something that's on our badge. Again, we want to make sure all of this is really top of mind, so everyone's got badges that really have all these foundational elements on them. As you can see, what we said here most recently was audacious excellence, exclamation point. P.S. We will win the Baldrige again. That approach of the wording was really making sure the organization understood the goal wasn't to win the Baldrige. The goal was to deliver audacious excellence, but the Baldrige framework is how we're going to ensure that we do so. And I will tell you that continuing to focus on that Baldrige framework has created tremendous value for our organization. We were pretty good when we won it back in 2014. But I'll tell you, we have made some very significant progress since then. And you can tell from the feedback reports between that first award and the second award. And we will continue to embrace this framework going forward. Now, one of the questions that had been asked before is really, how do we identify what our core competencies are? And as I mentioned, first and foremost, in our particular case, we are member owned. So we want to make sure that we are focusing on our membership first. What are their needs? How can we best deliver into those needs? And from an operational excellence, that really speaks to our business model and the fact that we may be different than other financial institutions. We may not be pricing focused, for example. We may not be offering the lowest rate on loans or the highest rate on deposits. What we're really wanting to do is make sure we are delivering stellar service and really meeting our members where their needs are. Genevieve, is there anything you'd add to that?
I don't know that I would.
Well,
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Well, thank you. I'll take that and run with it then. All right, so this is obviously a huge part of our strategic plan. And then we go into what are we going to do? How are we going to create the value for our membership? And what we show here is 6 different action plans that are intended to make sure that we are focused on really delivering within those key performance guidelines that I discussed earlier, that we've identified their needs, we understand what we're going to need to do in order to really fully satisfy them, and these are the objectives that we're going to pursue. These are, as I say, multi-year. Many of them will be some minor refinements, while others will be some pretty significant refinements from one year to the next. Now, when we go from here to the execution, I want to ask Genevieve to talk about how do you go from taking these strategic plans to the actions you're going to take.
All right, thanks, Michael. So we focus really on action plan development, and this is taken straight out of the definitions in the Baldrige criteria. You'll notice a lot that we use the exact language from the definitions in building what we call our action plans. So every strategic objective has identified key actions that we're going to take within the organization. And that really ends up in our one-year organizational business plan, which is tied to our budget. We facilitate within my group around each strategic objective. And for those of you who attended potentially category 3 or kind of our value streams. We really work in value streams here at Elevations, and that's how we deliver on more of our production goals. So for us, that would be things like payments, so move and manage money, how we do transfers or credit card transactions, consumer lending, our mortgage business, and also business and commercial. This is more of a newer area in the credit union space. So that's how we structure our work, and we facilitate action plan development throughout the organization to understand what exactly are we going to do in order to hit that goal, in order to deliver on our KPIs. We also want to understand how we're going to measure it. So the 11 KPIs are wonderful, but they're more of a lag measure. They're critical at understanding the organizational performance. But before we get to that point, if we need to adjust or we made assumptions about something, we want to understand how we're going to be measuring the success of that particular action. We also ask people questions around revenue. So back to financial sustainability, one of our key performance, one of our strategic goals, our efficiency. So this is high performance culture for us. We want to make sure that our employees are first and foremost serving the members. We have a lot of talent here. We don't want them like typing stuff into the keyboard that can be automated or just spending their time doing duplicate work. And this allows us then to spend the time needed to really engage with our members and live out that business model. We also look at member benefit so that not just the number of members that could potentially be impacted, but the impact to the members as well. So this allows us to put the right weight tied to these things, because ultimately this is going to really support our organizational project prioritization criteria. So a lot of you I know have questions around how do we prioritize our work, and we use this information collected from the action plans as an input to that assessment. We go right into resources, so understanding what resources are needed, and an action owner, of course, and when. We look at external costs, but cost is not really a driver in the prioritization. And sometimes we just get work that we have to do. I mean, it's a highly regulated environment, and compliance things just show up. We have to adjust to something. But from a resourcing perspective, what we want to understand too is this something that we have the knowledge internally to deliver? Is it familiar to us? Is it similar? Or do we really need to look at maybe some more external partners to get that strategic expertise, and then also understand the maintenance long term? So we build all of this in the background as the board and our executive team have built out our strategic plan. And this is not part of their function. This is really that next level of leadership that's coming to say, this is how we're going to get there. This is the work that we're going to do to get to that goal that you have outlined for us. So this is a view of our updated delivery team structure. And the reason I wanted to include it is because Jerry mentioned this in his opening session this morning around what was one of the changes that we made from that first time recipient of the award to our second. And a lot of it has to do with our delivery team structure. And this is likely familiar to those of you who are in a software development space or have worked in organizations that do their type of development. And we're using some of the principles of Agile and Scrum. And I am a big believer in that nobody does Agile and Scrum very prescriptive, how the framework is developed. And so just like those organizations, we have our own flavor for it that seems to be working well for us, I think. But typically where we struggled is we would, like many organizations, just get a huge list of projects that we're going to do. And a lot of times what would happen during kind of budgeting season, as I lovingly call it, it became like a Christmas wish list of all the things we want to do. And then we would hope that it would kind of get there, but we didn't really know if we had the resources or really the stamina or the capabilities to deliver on it. And we knew that we'd been identified as the best practice, and Jerry and the board and the executive team have done a lot of work around strategic planning. He didn't really spend that much time on it, I feel, this morning, but that was one of the earlier areas as part of this journey where while most of the organization was working on BPM and he talked about business process management, there was a lot of work happening behind the scenes on strategic planning. And this has become a very mature process for the organization. So while we were getting better clarity around what our strategic objectives are, we were able to also mature our enterprise process map, that work system view, into those value streams that I mentioned earlier. And you can see that on the right side with move and manage money, consumer, business, commercial lending, and mortgage. We had really great clarity on where we're going, who we want to be. And so instead of just continuing to deliver based on availability, like first group available to take something in, what we wanted to do was align that to our goals. So rather than a team pulling something in based on, okay, this is next on deck, and then having to struggle a little bit with the knowledge transfer and building the discovery, we specialized in these areas because we know that this is part of our long-term strategy, as well as who we are, how we deliver value through those value streams. And it allows individuals to be tied to an overall objective and really understand the landscape of that area. So as an example, with move and manage money, it's very much a lot of payments, credit card space, bill pay. Also, it's the world of Zelle and sort of Venmo and these new players that are on the landscape. So having a group of people who are able to kind of monitor what's happening, understanding the trends, what's happening in the industry, also looking at our technology product roadmaps to understand where it would make most sense to schedule or balance our delivery, really allowed us to increase our velocity. So we borrowed the idea from the Agile Scrum framework to really structure the teams around that backlog of work being contained, tied to a bigger objective. It's very different from software development in that in credit union or financial space for sure, we don't have like a product that we're continually building. We have products, of course, but it's not the same thing. It's not something that you're continuing to iterate. We have to, take on new things or adjust. So, and also address compliance things as well. So it's not as, I think, strict as Agile Scrum would be to a lot of people who might come to the organization. The other thing we've added here is traditionally, because it's an IT function, what we've added is each team also includes a business analyst and someone who is really steeped in business process management in an organization. I think everyone kind of probably who's participating today knows that that is definitely one of our key foundational elements in our success, and it's something we've continued to iterate and mature in. And so we've integrated business process management within our project delivery teams. I think it's very easy for organizations to say, oh, I just need to implement this module and all our problems are solved, or this technology. And that's rarely the answer. I know that we've all experienced that in some way. And by having a business process management facilitator just start the process, it makes us clear on whether or not we know that we are solving the right issue. And we're not just putting in or spending time on doing something that's not going to address the root cause. So when Jerry speaks to this cycle of learning here, that's really the evolution of where we were from our first time recipient to where we are today. And we're continuing to mature in this space, I think.
Very good, thank you.
All right, thank you. And then this is just a view of our intake and delivery process. We use kind of demand management. So project requests are submitted. We ask people to answer a series of questions that tie directly into our project prioritization criteria, which is tied very closely to our business model and strategic goals. We have this scored request added to those project delivery, each of those delivery teams, those project backlogs. And it allows us to create a roadmap. And in using this roadmap, we understand, okay, what are the dependencies? Because sometimes there's cross dependencies against the delivery teams, or there might be potentially an upgrade happening, let's say on a certain system or a platform that would maybe have us hold off on implementing something, or that compliance fire comes in and we need to shift something a little bit. So we really work in project roadmaps. every quarter we discuss what we're going to do. So quarterly business planning. This is also tied to delivery team planning, and I'll kind of combine these for a little bit, which is the next one. This is also a kind of a thought borrowed, if you will, from the world of Agile, and this is more of scaled Agile, and it's called big room planning. And what we do here at Elevations is every quarter we come together and we talk about, all right, this was our roadmap, and this was the planned work for what we expected to deliver last quarter. Did we hit our goals? And we also talk about what we did deliver, what we didn't, why didn't we, what we can learn from. And then we begin planning for the next quarter. We really look at it from an 18-month perspective. And while, as Michael and Kate spoke about, we do, of course, have a 5-year strategic plan and our annual business plan tied to the budget. But things change quickly, especially it feels like in the last year or so. It's very volatile, it feels, in this industry right now. So quarterly business planning allows us to adapt to those changes in the organization and the environment, and most importantly, take advantage of opportunities and be able to understand, like, what we had planned might have made sense, last year, but now this is on the horizon, and we want to be able to take that in to serve our membership effectively. Delivery team planning is part of that, and that quarterly business planning is more of like, okay, these are the actions that we've agreed collectively that we're going to deliver on to achieve those goals. And delivery team planning is more of the people on the team telling you the reality. This is how much time it's going to need. We really need external help for this. This is a dependency, so that we can then be able to forecast when we could see the delivery and then get that expected benefit, that return on the back end. We tie quarterly business planning with our quarterly financial reforecast. So also on an 18-month schedule, aligned with delivery, and then we'll know, okay, we are going to make that spend as planned, or actually this isn't going to be available as we expected because we had a delay, and so the return is delayed as well. So what could that potentially mean for us? So you can see through this timeline, the intention is that integration between all of those pieces to reach delivery.
That quarterly business planning is something that Genevieve brought in place a couple of years ago, and one of the nice byproducts of that is it really is cross-functional, right?
Yes.
And before that, each area would naturally have their own wish list of what they'd like to put on this upcoming quarter, and they would get frustrated if it didn't make it. Bringing those folks together and really with the lens of what's going to create the most value for the membership has really helped the entire team there become more aligned on holistically what's going to create the most value, and they understand better why their initiative didn't make the list for this upcoming quarter, right?
Exactly. And they're able to ask the hard questions sometimes because, every requester of a project thinks their project is the best. It should be at the top of the list. But sometimes it's nice to just get other people's views to say, well, why are we really doing this? And does this make sense? And think about it from that view. So I agree. And it's also a great communication point too, where we're able to communicate to the leadership team why something was selected over something else, and also when they can expect their work to be delivered. And it doesn't feel so personal, I think, in the end when I have to give them bad news that maybe they didn't make the cut. It's a consensus. No one leaves incredibly happy. I will tell you that in quarterly business planning, but there's absolutely consensus. And that's really what I think we're striving for. And this is just a bigger view of more detail. I know we're going to have this information available to you as a result of this meeting. But that pipeline disposition is that group where we, once the request is in, we pull in stakeholders such as IT, and that's all areas of IT. So depending on the request, it could be info and the security team, it could be architecture review, it could be developers, to help us truly size the project. I think that's another challenge for the business lines is, oh, it's not that hard. It's not going to take that long. It'll be pretty quick. And then once you get into it, you're like, oh, actually, this is more complex than I thought. So you go into it with eyes open to know that it's the right work and that we can prioritize it properly. I went over quarterly business planning and delivery team planning. That financial reforecast is there in the center. We've added a couple other pieces here, this product owner scrum of scrums, if you will. Every other week, we meet with the leads for each of these delivery teams to talk about, are you on track? Where are you? Are you having resource concerns? Making sure that potentially there might be something that another team has to deliver for one team to then be successful. So making sure we don't have those collisions or those issues. This is facilitated kind of as an in-between point with quarterly business planning. And then monthly steering is our executive project oversight. So the chiefs come together. We really talk about where are we with our roadmap? Are we on track? It's also an opportunity to look at some of our business cases, some more of our like higher level, bigger spend types of projects. And it allows us to then deploy resources as needed, and also project results. So benefits realization in project management world to make sure that we're getting the return as planned. I also include in this meeting just awareness, something I like to call like the business plan roundup. As Kate mentioned, Jerry, our CEO, is held accountable to the achievement of his goals and the business plan, as is Michael, who I will do whatever I can to take care of. And so I will make sure. So I like to make sure that our executive team has visibility into understanding, like, are we on track? Where are we off track? And it's not uncommon sometimes to be able to say, you know what, in retrospect, this might not have been the right key action at this time. And so let's look at that before we just continue blindly moving forward instead of telling the board we're going to do something that's kind of artificial. It doesn't make sense to do that. So it's a great monthly checkpoint for us. And so I like to kind of bring this all together because we've said the word plan a lot. And so it can be a little bit unsure, like, well, what does that mean exactly? So that 5-year strategic plan that Kate and Michael kicked off with is very much what it is. I mean, most organizations, I think, have that 5-year outlook, that rolling view. Ours has 3 strategic objectives and those 11 KPIs that we talked about. Our 1-year business plan is the one that's tied to budget. And the best way that I can think to explain it is that it's simply the execution of year 1 of the 5-year strategic plan. And those actions that we talked about that we build together, some of those will show in the organizational business plan, that 1-year plan. And some of them won't. Some of them will be more in our what we call our action plans playbook. And this is more of like the production and the value stream and the team plans, because there is a ton of work going on in this organization at all times to really enable those goals. But the difference is we really consider the work in our 1-year business plan to require board oversight. Those are things that we want to make sure we're reporting on a monthly basis, as Kate mentioned in that executive management report, and that we're keeping on track. And then this is just a view of our action plan playbook. This is a new addition for us here at Elevations in the last year. And it's really meant to be our internal employees. So the 5-year strategic plan and the 1-year business plan, the board of directors is our primary audience. And so it doesn't always, resonate when you take it all the way down through the organization. So what we wanted to include was something that really talks about the plain language work that's happening. And it's really everyone's kind of day-to-day. And as an example, these might be process improvement activities. These might be the development of certain types of training. This might be about migrating to a system that's more internal. I'll give you an example. We're going to be migrating our project management system this year. That's not something the board needs to know about or monitor in any way. But it's important because it's going to take IT resources. It's going to have some cost associated with it. There's going to be a training component. So I want to make sure there's visibility and that there's a place for our leaders to go and see that that work is occurring. Additionally, there's also accountability. What are my success measures for making that change? How am I going to go back and say, I want to make sure 3 years from now, I'm not like, we should have stayed with that old system. What does that look like? So these are the types of things following that same standardized template that we expect regardless of the level of the type of work.
Yes, this is the first year we've rolled that out.
Yeah.
And it's a really great step forward to make sure all of our leaders have good visibility into everything we're trying to accomplish and what their role is.
Yeah.
So one question did just show up about what project management system are we moving to?
We're going to, right now we're on ServiceNow, and we're not really using it as an enterprise tool, which makes it just unnecessary. We are going to Microsoft DevOps because we are a Microsoft organization, we do Azure, and I'm trying to get us on a single platform. I am a big advocate for that type. So that's what we're doing.
Very good. Genevieve, there was also a question. I see you use both process owners and product owners. Can you help me understand the interaction of these two roles in planning?
Yes. So product owners for us are really more around, and I know that there's a lot of crossover in some cases. So product owners are more of understanding like the requirements of the function that we're trying to do. How do we do the competitive analysis in the external space? They're really building, again, the requirements around it and serving as the person who is a bit of a decision maker on whether or not the work delivered by the team meets their requirements. So the acceptance criteria, if you will. Our business process architects are exactly that. So they're all black belts in Lean Six Sigma, and it's really around understanding efficiencies, removing waste, making sure we're delivering in a way that's best for our members. And so their interaction is very tight because the product manager is really determining like what we're going to deliver, and the process group really shows us how we're going to through our member interactions, making sure that we're not like over communicating or sending out a letter and an email and then someone else is following up over here, or making sure there's not too much time going by before when we have that interaction and that follow-up. So they're paired very closely with one another through each of our teams. And then this is sort of the end, but tracking progress. So we talked a little bit about our different ways that we want to make sure that we're on track with our strategic goals and also on our delivery. And some of you, I imagine, probably attended the Category 4 session, and Tom Krings and Mara did what I'd heard, like a wonderful job kind of going over our dashboards. And these are just examples of information that we have available with visibility to the entire organization. So the Compass is our business intelligence analytics system. So this is available through our intranet, and employees can go in, they can filter information to understand exactly how we're performing. Our executive management report is a board level report on how we're performing as an organization and as we had planned against a business plan. And what I think is really amazing about Elevations, because in other organizations it's not the same, this is the board audience, and Jerry sends this to all employees every month after sharing it with the board at their meeting. I think it's the following day. He distributes this to all staff, which is pretty incredible, I think. A lot of transparency here. We have a business plan scorecard. So all of those actions that we talked about with those success measures, we put them we make them transparent and available to everyone to say, hey, we committed to doing this. Are we on track? And also, we thought this was going to get us here. And did it actually deliver on that? Did we get lucky? And we're seeing results in a lag that actually have nothing to do with it? Or is this making the improvements that we expected? Of course, we have our year-end report, much as many organizations do, again, made available in our project roadmap that I talked about a little bit earlier. We make that available to everyone in the organization so they can see the work that we're planning to deliver and kind of can have the expectation on when they'll be able to receive the benefit of that work. One more, I think, or?
Well, Genevieve, can I jump in for a second and just say something about the executive management report, which I very much appreciate, is that we received the executive management report on our board portal, so it's online, and we go through the material and we have the opportunity to engage in discussion with the management team and ask questions. So we're not passively, receiving this report. We have a chance to ask for clarification, to dive deeper on a subject, or to ask for examples going forward. And so it's a very active, interactive report.
Yeah, Kate, thanks for that. That's a really good point. That all really occurs before the board meeting, really, right? We provide that information in advance to the board, and over the following days, we're blessed to have a very diverse and engaged board that challenges us through that portal. And doing so from a management perspective, I really appreciate that because that gives us the opportunity to give them a nice detailed response, right? Where it's not just happening in a board meeting and something happens verbally. No, we're going to bring data to the table in that conversation, and we'll have those conversations really before the board meeting. So when the board meeting occurs, it's really focused really on strategic issues, right, Kate?
Yes.
That is something that is pretty unique to the approach that we've taken, and it's created great value. So that does lead us to, okay, what does this mean from a results standpoint? Are we getting the kind of results that we would hope to get? We certainly have cultivated a high performance culture with a very engaged and productive team. We are doing a good job of cultivating member loyalty. And really, again, a piece of this is word of mouth is big for growing our business. Most of our members come to us because they've heard about the service levels, about our members' trust in what we're doing on their behalf. As a result, yeah, financial sustainability has been a byproduct. And really embracing this framework and focusing on it for the last 13 years has enabled us to really compete well against companies that are much larger than us. So in the lower left-hand side, for example, we look at market share compared to Wells and Chase are the number one and number two mortgage originators in the country, and they dwarf us with regards to their resources. But again, this framework and really being so focused on its execution has been a game changer for the organization and created great value for our membership. Kate, any additional perspective from the board's perspective, from your perspective?
No, I don't think so. Not at this time.
Okay. Very good. Well, with that, would like to open it up to any additional questions that you may have.
You know what, Michael, I will say something actually. I want to just say a word about the social efforts that the board, it's really hard when you meet for 3 hours once a month to kind of nurture those core values of integrity, respect, in working together. So the board puts a lot of time and energy into spending time with one another outside the boardroom. We have social things that we go to. We try to go to educational conferences together. And it has really helped in providing a foundation. So we have a good working relationship, and we're not trying to create that relationship. We're not trying to build the airplane while we're flying it. And it's really impressive what I've seen the board do and what we can accomplish because we know each other. We can have hard conversations. We can disagree, and we can walk out and smile and slap each other on the back and say that was really good. And it's because of that good foundation we built.
Yeah, great point, Kate. I mean, I think that's a big differentiator for us is the culture that we have as an organization. And really a big piece of that is always feeling the ability to have candid conversations and knowing that we're all focused on creating the most value for the membership. We want to really challenge each other to make sure, collectively we'll make the right decisions. At this point, I don't see any additional questions. Oh, wait a minute, just 1 second. Do we have one more? We're going to see if we have one more. In the meantime, thank you so much for coming to Boulder. It was 4 degrees when we woke up this morning, so just to make you feel better about where you're at today.
I had a question.
Yes.
John Felton had his hand up before me, so maybe him first.
Oh, thank you. So it's really clear why Elevations is a 2-time Baldrige honoree. I mean, this is unbelievably impressive. It's also a bit overwhelming for those of us who are on the front end of the journey. What advice do you have to really get started down the strategic planning path in a way that's Baldrige, but isn't quite to the point that you're at?
Yeah, I think, you got to recognize, early on that this is going to be bite-sized, this is going to be iterative, and really it's just that taking that first step from my perspective. I'll tell you, I couldn't spell Baldrige when I came here, and I didn't understand how daunting it can be. But if you take little bite-sized steps along the way and iterate towards it, I will guarantee you will make progress each and every year going forward. This is certainly some hard work, but from my experience, it's really been work that has created a lot of value, work very much worth doing. Genevieve, what would you say from a strategic planning perspective?
I think that when you look at all of this, it's a lot, and it didn't all happen immediately. Like, these were pieces and elements of inputs that were added as we matured in other areas. And if you're at a starting point, I feel that in my experience, a lot of organizations struggle if they're not clear on their mission, vision, values. And it's why it's so important, as Michael was showing in that foundational view, it's critical to be clear on your values, who you aspire to be, and what's most important. Before you bring in, scenario planning and PESTLE and things like that. Because if you can have the clarity around that, you can identify a few actions and measure those. The next layer to me is just a SWOT. I think that the SWOT analysis is a very effective tool in strategic planning. And that's kind of the path we took. It wasn't doing all of those pieces at once. So that's always the advice I sort of give to organizations, is that if you're unsure that everyone is aligned around that mission, vision, values, it's going to be very hard to, I think, move forward, mature.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Our processes, our plan looked quite different 13 years ago than they do today, without a doubt. I think one of the beauties of the Polygish framework is that it really has instilled in us this passion for getting better every day and making sure we're not getting complacent, just taking little iterations and little refinements along the way.
I'm going to jump in there if I can and just suggest filling out the organizational profile in the Baldrige application, just to get a perspective on where you are.
Is a good foundation for it.
I agree with you, Kate. I feel like it sometimes feels like you want to, it's just like projects. A lot of times you just want to move into actions. And then when you step back, you have to ask yourself, is this really getting me to where I want to be going to? And it's similar with the org profile. It might be more exciting to start with a category, but if you really need to foundationally be able to answer the questions in the org profile to know, to take that next step. So I completely agree with you.
Very good. Thank you for your question. Jim, you had a question?
I did, thanks. I think it's Genevieve, maybe you can help me and the rest of us. Start at the bottom. So I'm on a project team that's in the playbook, so it's not necessarily in the direct oversight of the upper management and the board and all that, but I want to make sure that my team knows how what they do on a Tuesday makes its way all the way back up there, right? So what's the mechanism or the steps to your insider project and you're cranking along, and how does that team then plug into that rhythm and that communication, that tracking, reporting process up to the top? Could you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. From that perspective, what we're doing is we're using that roadmap. We're monitoring from that monthly steering meeting I talked about. So that's the executive team oversight. So they see the entire backlog of work that's planned and what the team is working on and the status of all of that. So they get a report that talks about this is on track, this has been delayed, what's the reason, and anything that requires the deployment of more resources or the results. If there's a look back, we provide that as part of the package. Within our operational rhythm, which is discussed a bit more in category 1 this morning. But within our operational rhythm, it's whether it's in a value stream meeting, a monthly steering meeting, like one of our retail, kind of depending on the area it's supporting. So it's really end to end. The strategic stuff, it just does. Like those key actions that really move the organization forward at a strategic level are going to get more discussion and visibility versus the things that are smaller and operational. So those would be better served in more of our value stream venues, as an example.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's good. And I was thinking, but from the team perspective, I'm on there working on some credit card program or whatever, or new membership benefits package program or something like that, right? And those folks having a notion of where their work attaches up top, I guess was my thought too, right? In terms of, you know what I mean?
I
how,
do.
how that team, somebody says, okay, I need that done, Genevieve, because I need to plug it into to this meeting, which plugs into that meeting, which then goes to the board kind of thing, right?
Right. So that's a good example of we in the playbook. So that's available that this is work we're going to do. We then show those backlogs, and we also include this in the quarterly strategy meetings. So, and those, I'm sorry, the quarterly planning meeting, as well as those delivery team planning meetings. So they're taking the information to show this is what we're working on. This is what we delivered. This is what we said we were going to do. This is what we actually did. Here's the results. That includes that team. And so we roll that up into a package that is then presented to our executive team so they have that visibility. And I use that information then to kind of help develop the executive management report to give it the board oversight. So we use these different operational rhythm meetings to make sure, and we also use a lot of the same information. I feel like there's no reason to kind of like recreate it. So they're giving me the input, it's going into one forum. We're using that to then build on to make sure it's being communicated and rolled up appropriately. And these are active participants in quarterly business planning and delivery team planning. So it's not just outside their view or anything. If that helps.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. We've got an additional question. Do you have a different process for those smaller projects that can potentially just be done by staff or leadership within a department that doesn't impact any other areas? And if so, how do you determine which one of these categories a project falls within?
We do. We have a criteria that we use that we kind of balance what resources are needed and the impact. And then for those that we don't really have a name for them, but they kind of just go down a different path where we add them to the backlog, and then the team will pull in that work as capacity allows, versus requests that maybe are simple in implementation, but there might be a larger communication needed or some sort of materials for training. And depending upon this criteria will depend on whether or not, I guess, the level of oversight it needs. We do not want to hold anybody up. That's like super important in our world. We want to get it finished and get it out, but we also want to make sure that it's adopted properly by the organization. So we do allow allocation of the teams to spend some time on exactly that type of work.
Very good. Thank you, Genevieve. Additional questions? This is where we need our Jeopardy music, right?
I know. You want to do it? You're pretty good at it.
All right, Kathy's got a question.
I do. Thank you so much. What a great presentation. My question is for Kate. Kate, would you talk a little bit about how your board goes about preparing for what I believe you called the spring board planning and the fall? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So for the Spring Board Planning Conference, I think I mentioned that the chair and the vice chair meet with Jerry and Michael to kind of set the agenda, and then we work on our own pestle survey. It's independent from the survey that the management team completes, but we work with an outside consultant, and we. In the past years, actually, we have done independent pestle surveys. So each one of us receives the survey, we fill it out, we give it to our consultant, and he does an aggregate of the information and pulls out themes of external forces that will be affecting us in the future. This year, we've decided to do it a little bit differently. We've decided to work as a board collaboratively. So we're going to go into the pestle survey and answer the questions together as a group. Which we're really excited about, just to kind of mix up the format a little bit. And then, as I said, we pull out, hey, we need to know more about cybersecurity. So here is specifically the kind of training that we need either before the Springboard Planning Conference, so we can, interact intelligently with management when they're talking to us about the issues that they're dealing with. We also do the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, the internal, external pros and cons of, or not pros and cons, but of what the external factors are. We do get a little bit information about the the external subject matter and the environmental analysis. I think Michael talked about those teams that meet quarterly. So some of that information trickles up to us. So by the time we get to the Spring Board Planning Conference, we have a good idea of the issues that we'll be talking about as we go forward in our strategic planning. Now for the Fall Board Planning Conference, that is where we're focusing on our business plan. Spring Board is our strategic plan and the Fall Board is our business plan. We work a lot. When we get to the Fall Board Planning Conference, we've already seen a lot of the pieces. And so when we get there, we are familiar. We've done a lot of work on our board portal. Any educational issues that we felt that we were a little bit behind on, we've taken care of before that. But there's another really important aspect to that Fall Board Planning Conference, and that is that we, as a board, complete a self-assessment once a year. So we bring in an outside consultant. We start with them, I think sometimes late, I want to say August, kind of late summer. And we talk with that person about what we want to accomplish for the year in assessing how we're functioning as a board and how we are, what our efficiencies are, what our opportunities are, what we could be doing better, all these different things. And we've had the habit of kind of working with a consultant for, maybe 2 or 3 years. And then as we feel we've gleaned as much as we can from that particular expert, then we'll move on to another one and get a different perspective. So in the Fall Board Planning Conference, after a day with management and talking through the business plan, the next day we take, just as a board, in executive session, and we go through our board self-assessment results. So we're going through the results of individual interviews that we've done with our consultant, who's pulling out themes and saying, I see you're doing this really well. I see you might want to consider doing this differently. Or more important questions have been, why are you not doing it? Or why are you doing it this way? So we can really take a good look at ourselves and make sure that we're functioning well.
Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I appreciate it very much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kate. Other questions? All right, hearing none, I think we'll close this session. Again, we really appreciate your interest in our journey, and please let us know if in follow-up there's any more information you'd like to hear. We will, again, have these materials available to everyone to access thereafter. But congratulations on your journey. I'm confident that it'll create great value for both yourself and your companies. Best wishes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.